All right, so today's my dad's birthday. He would have been 63 thanks to Esma's fantastic math. We got that one figured out. Um, it's interesting to take stock, really, because so much of my awakening and spirituality was initially inspired um, by my father. So, fortunately, he didn't indoctrinate me with any views, like scientifically, philosophically, religiously. He was like a agnostic, atheist type person, but more so agnostic. Definitely, he was pretty open minded, and I noticed how impactful that is in hindsight. Because especially with spiritual practice and with um, religion, even science, there's this really big investment in views and belief systems. I mean, it's extremely pernicious. It's everywhere. We have an idea or a map or a sense of how things are or what they are or why they are. And we cling to that very ferociously. I mean, people kill each other over this stuff. And because of my dad, um, when I would ask him questions about like the meaning of life or the purpose of life or the existence of God or the afterlife and all this stuff, he'd just say, "Yeah, I don't know. You should figure that out for yourself." So, in a way, my from an early age, my mind just didn't have much of a uh, fixation or um, necessary investment in views. And this is the thing about beliefs and views, and this is also the case in Buddhism and in any spiritual practice. What I find, and I was also, subject to this, is that we need things to be a certain way in order for the world to make sense. And there's so many spiritual beliefs that we have that if you take a shotgun to them, it just you have nothing to stand on. I'm a very I actually don't recommend my extremeness to other people. I don't think people should live the way that I live, actually. Because for me, it's like my mind can't hold beliefs anymore. Like, I don't even believe my own beliefs. Karma, for example. Karma is huge. It's like the critical pillar of one of the critical pillars of Hinduism and Buddhism. I've never seen it. You know, something what goes around comes around. I mean, that makes sense, but the actual law, the actual principle, the wheel of transmigration, how a specific condition or specific event can be the product of something that you've done 10,000 lifetimes ago. I'm not far along the bodhisattva stages to see that. I acknowledge that it can exist, that it's definitely a possibility that this is the case, but it's not a directly accessible reality to me the same way that other things are. So, even my own beliefs, I don't have a particular dog in that fight. And in one sense, that could be very destabilizing for a person, and in another, liberating. For example, there's a thing, there's common spiritual maxims that we just accept as true. One of them is everything happens for a reason, and time again, you see this used as justification for bad behavior and stupid mistakes, when really you were just being an idiot. And maybe it happened for a reason, or maybe I was just being dumb. And there's nothing, nothing cosmic about how that went down. It was just, that's just the way that it was. Everything happens for a reason is one of them. One of the core principal beliefs. It may be true, but I don't go around acting like I know that it's true. What's another good one? What's another sacred cow that I can slay? What is happening is what is meant to happen. Like, this is like, it's supposed to be happening this way. Total assumption. I mean, like, how do we know that at all? That it's supposed to be going down this way? It's ridiculous. But these kinds of this kind of like belief flexibility that I have, I really got from my dad, and I'm extremely grateful to him. That he was the seed for this, because even in Buddhism, even in, you know, these like practitioner communities where people have been meditating for a very long time, they have their understanding of how things work, and, you know, if it doesn't fit that map, then it can't be true, and it's not in accord with the Buddhist teachings and all of this stuff. And even when I've defended the Buddhist teachings as they're in the Pali scriptures, it's purely on what's being stated in the scriptures. Like, it's not because I actually believe that that is the sole, true, unassailable fact, and nothing exists outside of that. Like, that's just not the case. The times that I've argued this is because people conflate Buddhism with Vedanta, but it's not because I actually it's not because I actually think that, like, the way that Buddhists see things is the absolute correct way. So that flexibility, yeah, I got that from my dad. And I owe him so much for that, because I have that kind of mind that would easily be trapped by concepts. But the most important thing I got from my dad really was, like, he introduced me to what I could only call unconditional love. I think I was probably 12 at the time, and he'd always do this thing where, like, every now and then he'd have like a lesson to give me, or something that he would teach me. And so this time he said, hey, come meet me outside, let's talk. And so I went out there, and he would just sit like in this area in the backyard, and he's like, step into my office, and there's no office, it's just like a table outside. And we sit down, and he would like be quiet and like stoic, and then he said, son, there's two kinds of people in this world: people who serve themselves and people who serve others. Which kind would you like to be? And another lesson he taught me that day was something along the lines of, everyone wants to change the world and do good and be of service. And it may seem at times that our contribution is small, or that the service that we're giving is insignificant. But the truth is, it's extremely significant to the person that is being helped. It may not shift the tides of time and be this massive world-changing thing that a person does, but it changes the world for that individual. And in that way, what you do and how you serve does have a huge impact, and it does change the world. So I got lessons like this from my dad, despite his addiction problems and the periods of my life where he was really absent, and I had to figure it out on my own. My parents never divorced, but There were times, like one year, my dad and we said no less than, or no more than 10 words to each other, like in a whole year, living in the same house, seeing him walk by all the time. So I developed so much rage from that, from the isolation, and yeah, just the pain of not understanding what addiction really was, and the suffering it caused my family to see that one thing just destroy everything. Like that one thing alone it just ripped my whole childhood apart. So maybe some of you don't know, my dad passed away when I was 19, going on 20. I was in a meditation retreat at the time, and I had this plan to stay in Thailand and just like master meditation and stay in Thailand and stay in Burma. So I didn't have any expectation that my dad would actually pass away. Even though his health was not fantastic, there was no indication that anything was impending. When he died, a whole different phase of the spiritual journey began for me, in the sense that my main priority up until that point was just practicing as much meditation as I possibly could. But after he passed away, there was now this whole healing element, growth and maturity elements that were thrown in, that suddenly I was confronted with, very, very quickly. And looking back, I don't think I handled it very well. Yeah. I don't think I handled it very well. Probably should have done more therapy. But ultimately, the pain of losing him, and the pain of watching him die, and the pain of seeing him, fall to his addiction, it made me there's not much that is able to break me after that. So when I really look at all the difficult decisions and the challenges and the worst things that happened to me, the outcome has always been seismic, like in a positive way, surprisingly. And my dad passing away, it made me have to figure things out on my own. It made me have to raise myself, and maybe not everyone should have to go through that, but it certainly made me what I am today. I don't think I would be able to sit without moving for 6 hours, or not eat for a month, or do all kinds of nonsense that I involve myself in, if it wasn't for this like pendulum swing ADHD crazy stuff that became part of my personality as a result of my relationship with my dad. One of my favorite or most profound memories was I've shared this with David and Esma, so they've heard this story, but I used to play Little League Baseball, 4th grade. I really sucked. Like, I'm telling you, it was awful. The only kid that was worse on the team was this special needs, mentally challenged kid. Besides him, I was the worst. So literally that whole season, I did not hit the ball at all. Like, not even once. And it's like second to last game of the season, and this kid throws the ball and like hits me right in the nuts, and I just get real angry. And my dad knew I was gonna blow it. He's like, oh, he's gonna strike out. And he shouted from the bleachers. He said, Ryan, if you hit that ball, I'll give you $100. And I was like, really? He's like, absolutely. And so then like the pitcher throws the ball, and like for the first time the whole season, I hit the ball. I run all the way to second base, and everyone was like going crazy. I was going crazy. I was like, I can't believe I hit the ball. And yeah, I made it to home base for the first time in like the entire season. And we're in the car, and I asked him, so are you gonna give me the $100? He's like, absolutely not. just total letdown. No. So yeah, so even then it was a funny experience, but I learned a good lesson that day too, that certain things you can take seriously, but other things not. And yeah, the last conversation I ever had with my dad, I was in Thailand, and I was gonna go to Pandita Rama, the Mahasi Vipassana Center in Burma, and it's interesting because I was just telling my family friend that like my dad and I were not always in best communication, and he called me, and I told him what my plans were. I said, yeah, I'm gonna stay here and really just learn and master this stuff. And he said, not everyone can do what you're doing, and I'm really proud of you, and I'm gonna miss you. No, he said, we'll miss you. And then he said, hold on, let me get your mother. And fortunately I said, wait. And I said, wait, Dad. And he said, what's up? And I just said, I love you. And he said, I love you too, son. And those were the last words we said to each other. And then I talked to my mom on the phone, and said bye to both of them and all of that. And yeah, 3 weeks later he was dead. So very, very lucky. It reminds me of all of those simulation dreams that I've had, or the more recent ones where I was told that the trainings that you have in the dream state, or the simulations that you experience in the dream state, are preparing you for actual conditions or events in waking life. But there's this weird, I'm sure some of you have gotten a sense for this at some point in your practice, or in your adventures into altered states, but there's this sense that somehow the present or even future events are shaping the past. It doesn't make sense logically, and it doesn't make sense linearly, but it's just it's an actual very visceral experience or feeling. And I've gotten tastes of it before, but the most recent one was I was in India, and I had an OBE, like a simulation OBE, from 1 to 2, or from 1 to 3 or so in the morning, and came out of the state and everything. And then I woke up around 6, and I did my Kriya yoga and meditation, entered this pretty deep phase of the practice, and it felt like 2 points in time merged. It felt like the Kriya and the meditation that I was doing in that sit, like the luminosity and the clarity from it that exploded, it moved backwards in time and somehow contributed to the clarity that was necessary to have that OBE. And Bob Monroe describes lots of particular incidences in the third book of this one point that I'm discussing. Yeah, it doesn't make sense, sounds nuts, but it's a very visceral thing. In the same way that bilocation is experiencing two places in space simultaneously, or two consciousness vantage points simultaneously, there's a version of that is between moments in time. So in the same way that you're having an OBE and there's a split where your consciousness is in your physical body and then it's also like in the corner of the room and it's like phasing back and forth between the two, it's possible for that same spatial bilocation to be replaced, or to have a temporal time-based version of that phenomena. Yeah, it's as if these moments in time, they're at least specific moments, it's as if this invisible fractal or this invisible thread runs through them. It's like the way that two or multiple places in space can resonate, or that synchronicities can occur between multiple places in space. It seems that there's the same capacity for that to occur across time. I think that's the whole basis of ancestral healing, actually. That the healing that you do and the processes that you're undergoing and awakening that is happening, it reaches all the way back through the past, either through consciousness or through the field or through DNA. I don't know, but this is a commonly experienced or reported phenomena. But yeah, so my dad was really the initiator of my journey. I don't think that without that suffering, I would have anything to do with this stuff. Yeah. If it wasn't for the suffering as a primary condition or cause, then I don't think I would have had an interest particularly in spirituality or transcendence, or there wouldn't have been a pain for me to attempt to overcome. There wouldn't have been a suffering for me to attempt to release or, destroy, heal from, whatever the word or whatever particular frame we want to use. So it's interesting that the first noble truth is the truth of suffering. One, because it's universal, everyone suffers, but two, because without that as a proximate cause, there would be no reason to investigate the second truth, or the cause of suffering, or the third truth, the release from suffering, the end of suffering. And definitely no reason to get on the path, which is the fourth truth. So if you don't have the first, I don't really see much of a reason. I mean, just have an ordinary life and have a good time on your short stay on Earth. Why investigate any of this stuff if your life is perfect as it is? There's no reason to start if everything's all good. So we can always be grateful for our sufferings and afflictions. And especially for my dad, I think at one point it dawned on me that all the things that I loved and all the things I hated about myself, I got from him. And it's valuable to see that. Where the good and the bad in you comes from, where you picked it up, where you learned it, what you did with it, what you didn't do with it. There's all this only live in the now, only be present stuff that we hear so often in spiritual circles. And it's true, the only reality is the present. It's not a deniable. I'm not denying that. But even in the stages of insight, there's a step called review. Literally, it's called review. So in the commentaries, there's 16 stages of insight that end in, or they culminate in cessation. And after cessation, it's called path and fruition moment. After fruition, there's a stage called review. The reviewing is essential because you might not actually have a clear recollection of what occurred during the path and fruition moment. That state and that experience can be so pure that it's like elusive to your consciousness. It's similar to OBE in the sense that you could have a really profound one, but if you don't remember it after the fact, it's gone. So right after a massive spiritual breakthrough or a fruition moment, the next step is review. You have to go back and look and see what happened. What was the mind before that breakthrough, that moment? How was the mind after the fact? And in comparing the two, then you can actually perceive or recollect what may or may not have occurred in that moment. So my talk today about my dad is in the spirit of review. That finally, after so many years, whatever grief it is that you may have can become this huge source of peace in your life. Huge source of equanimity, that you're able to go from such pits of despair to a balanced and a more fulfilled life. If it wasn't for that kind of depth, you wouldn't or may not appreciate as much neutrality or equanimity. So grief eventually does give way to peace. I wouldn't say it's a matter of time. They say that time heals all wounds, and I really don't think that's the case, actually. Healing heals all wounds, and healing can happen in time. But it might also not happen. Like, if you don't take the healing seriously or give it the time that is due or the time that is needed. Doesn't matter how much time passes. You're still trapped in what happened. Trapped by your own mind. All right, everyone. That's the recording for today.